Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of FinServ Tech Oracles. I'm Johna Johnson, here with my oracular colleague, Jerry Murphy, and we're ready to share our thoughts on technology for financial services firms. So, Jerry, you saw an interesting article last week about CIOs feeling the heat from their CEOs to implement generative AI. This is a thing we call airplane reading syndrome. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal that was really about the pressure CIOs are feeling by both their CEOs and the board on implementing generative AI specifically. I mean, there's obviously a lot of things in the press now about what's going on, not just with OpenAI, which is the big one with ChatGPT, but you're really seeing Microsoft, Alphabet, their Google, Amazon, Apple, Meta, all these platforms are really touting how they have this ability to generate content, whether it's visual content or whether it's written content, and people are really feeling like they have to use it, even though the executives of these very companies with this generative AI admit that it's uh, beta versions. The data they generate may be completely false information, and yet people are feeling like if they don't do this, they're going to be at a competitive disadvantage with their colleagues. And the problem with this, of course, is very often when we're in the wild west of new technologies, the regulatory and the ethical considerations of those can be of secondary importance until something catastrophic happens. And then all of a sudden, people are like, where were you? How could you have possibly let that horrible thing happen that you just did with this untested technology? And yet, we're absolutely seeing that in spades today. And of course, the concern that some IT executives rightfully have is I'm going to put forced to be using something that's not ready for prime time. I won't have had the testing done. I won't have the guardrails in place, and then all of a sudden I'm going to expose my company to something potentially horrific. And then of course people are going to blame me for how could you have let that. Yes, we wanted to use it, but you
Yeah.
certainly knew that we didn't want you to do anything unethical.
Well, and as you're talking, that brings to mind a couple things. First of all, is that famous case of the lawyer a couple of weeks ago, who got in serious trouble for using generative AI as part of his services to a client, and generative AI managed to make up a bunch of case references,
Right.
which you really don't want to do. But yes, we agree that there's a long history of CEOs deciding that they need their CIOs to go pursue the latest shiny new technology without really thinking it through. And Jerry, you raised the issue of digital ethics. I'll just make a definition of this, which is that a digital ethics program is a set of policies and associated processes, and the processes are important, to manage the use of AI within an organization, including but not limited to issues concerning privacy protection, bias, algorithms skewed by race or gender, etc., and general ethical behavior. And if I sound like I'm reading a definition, it's because I am. We actually asked the participants in our recent research study on enterprise AI whether or not they had a digital ethics policy, and unsurprisingly, fewer than half did, even among financial services firms. Just 43% of financial services firms said they had any form of digital ethics policy in place. So, and that's better than average, which was about 33%, about a third, but still less than half. So, Jerry, what should technology folks at financial services firms do when they're caught between the rock of not having a digital ethics policy and program, and the hard place of the CEO pushing them to do something with AI?
Well, John, one of the first things they should do is actually find out if they do, in fact, have a digital ethics policy. There's several people you might ask about that. The first person might be your legal department if you have one. The second person could be your chief risk officer, somebody in the risk department, maybe somebody in compliance. Um, if none of those people know, or worse, they say, yes, we do not have a digital ethics policy, then it would make sense for you to convene folks, really raise your concerns about the fact that we need to have some guidance and policies on ethical use of these types of technologies, and really push forward developing a policy. And frankly, since the CEOs are pushing to use this generative AI technology, it's a perfect time to say, well, if you really want us to use this, we must have some guidelines on the ethical use of it, if you really say that we need to do this thing. And then not only is it paying lip service and say, okay, yes, we have a policy and say you can only use it ethically, or we say something very lip servicey about it, you really need to think about, as an IT executive, how it is that this policy is going to be forced. Because after all, one of the things we're finding with the use of generative AI is you may not even know what business teams are doing with it right now. We've actually talked to some of our clients and found out, when we talk to IT people about how much they're going to use it, what we end up finding out is when you look at the total amount of staff that are using AI, most of them, for a lot of companies, are actually in the business units that are using them more so even than IT is. And for that reason, we need to think about how it is that we're going to be enforcing these policies that we push to create.
Well, and that's a great observation. I think a policy's all well and good, but unless you can figure out how to make sure it's followed, it's dead in the water. You might as well not bother. So your top takeaways for this week are: CIOs need to be prepared to deal with generative AI and pressure from their CEOs to do so. That means technologists must push to develop a digital ethics policy if one doesn't exist, and think about how it will be enforced. And by the way, just a quick plug for Nemertes here. We are happy to spearhead that initiative. We have a workshop offering that we can give you that will get you jump started on getting your digital ethics policy in place and usable. So, Jerry, thanks very much for those observations. Thanks everybody for watching. Please go ahead and register for the entire series online. And we look forward to talking to you next week at 0900 for the next episode of FinServ Tech Oracles, right before the
Stay
markets open.
generatively safe out there.
Yes.